Death to the ego, good, bad, or necessary for living in a right and true human state and connection with divine. Hi, Reverend Grace here. This offering for this week, something that's been playing on my mind for a long while, is something I've contemplated, and you hear a lot about, especially recent years, this thing of death to the ego. And it's certainly not a recent thing. This is something that goes way back in many traditions. So as much as I am not some enlightened guru, I do feel that I have my own take on this, because there's so much put out into the world, and I think there's so many people that are exploring and wanting to seek understanding of this thing this big old pudding of spirituality. Is it it's almost like a thing, like everyone, you should be, all these videos, you've got to be getting rid of your ego, you've got to be overcoming, it's all about unity and connection and all this sort of thing. But sometimes it feels like this really way off thing, this, full enlightenment, like, we haven't all got time to be sitting around in a cave like some sort of Buddhist monk. And yet it seems so crucial that we have this death to the ego. But what is the reality here of what we're talking about when you're trying to grow spiritually and awaken, but also you're a human being living in like the reality of daily life? So is it this really hard thing to attain and we should all be striving for it? Or is it this thing where actually we can just sit back and we can engage with a part of it that is sensical, is that a word? To live it with it being in a more common sense way and practical way in our lives. So I've made some notes, because otherwise I won't get these things right. So reading around it a little bit, is defined as a profound, intense and transformational experience. Yes, definitely is. Where a person's sense of self or personal identity dissolves or is temporarily lost. So temporarily lost, that would suggest that this is a thing that maybe some of us who aren't those Buddhist monks that go off into a cave for 12 years, or, the desert fathers go off out into the desert as they did many moons ago, that it's a thing that we can attain temporarily. Now, whether that's a little bit like, we can all have good intentions and make New Year's resolutions and they fall apart within days or weeks, and that is our human nature, then maybe it's more like that, unless you are, somebody like a, Hindu guru, and you've gone off, done massive deep meditation and fasting and all the rest of it. But I think that there is it is something that we can attain in a really important and helpful way. But it's not this like I say, this sort of a thing, this golden gem up on a mountain that you can't quite ever get to the top of the mountain to achieve it. Complete loss of subjective self-identity, complex and multifaceted concept. So the Muslim Sufis, they called it fana or fana, I think it's probably fana, and that basically means annihilation. Annihilation sounds pretty heavy. Medieval Jewish Kabbalists, they termed it as the kiss of death. Now, when we say the kiss of death, that kind of sounds pretty scary too. In Jungian psychology, Van Gogh and Merrick define it as a fundamental transformation of the psyche, and to the Buddhists they called it ego death, and this is this thing of enlightenment. Joseph Campbell, so he was this dude, look him up, Hero's Journey. He's a big time expert, or he was, I think he's still alive, but maybe not. Big time expert in mythology. And he had the ego death as the second phase of the description in the hero's journey, and other phases are separation, transition, and incorporation. The second phase is a phase of self-surrender and ego death, after which the hero returns to enrich the world with their discoveries. Self-surrender. So we'll come back to surrender, because that is a word that we can get to grips with, and something that we can certainly do whilst being an everyday human being and living our everyday lives. So back in the day, in the swinging 60s, when they all started doing acid, LSD, in the psychedelic culture, Leary, Metzner and Alpert in 1964, the study that they did, and that's when it was released, define what they call ego loss as a part of the symbolic experience of death. So that's symbolic death, not actual death, in which the old ego must die before one can be spiritually reborn. And we're not talking about born again Christians, although I think within that church and particular aspect of Christian faith, there is a thing of reborn, but it's not quite the same thing, I don't think, although it is probably around the same sort of a thing. They define ego loss as complete transcendence beyond words, beyond space-time, beyond self. There are no visions, no sense of self, no thoughts. There are only pure awareness and ecstatic freedom. Now, I'm not surprised that they're using the term ecstatic freedom, because anyone who's experienced LSD or mushrooms, or I suppose ayahuasca, I don't know, I would imagine ayahuasca would come into that list, certainly. And I would think even high states on, what is it called? Pills. Oh. I would think that, when they're experiencing such highs, you can certainly feel on those drugs a stepping out of reality, certainly with hallucinations. So say when you're on LSD or mushrooms and you're having hallucinations and you're out in the natural environment and you're seeing things in a really microscopic way, or you're seeing things that they look like a real form and then they turn into not a real form. Now, whether we're breaching the veil there and actually seeing things how they really are, who's to say? Or whether it's just a part of the brain is opening up that's just hallucinating and seeing things in a different way. Who knows? But certainly that thing of ecstatic freedom, experiencing something that's just like everything is all about love and it's just so amazing, and that I'm not surprised that comes under the psychedelic culture. When it's talking about death, there's lots of things like death to the ego, but also death to the self. Interestingly, if you translate the word death in Hebrew, now is that modern Hebrew or ancient Hebrew? But anyway, probably the same. I don't know, I'm not an expert. But it means to be somewhere else. And certainly these states of ego death, when people are having a temporary experience of it, it's usually because they're in a trance state, a deep meditative state, on psychedelics or not. So the Sufis, the ones that are whirling around, you might have seen that. Look up the Sufi whirling dance. It's amazing, and they're getting into a trance state by spinning around and around and around. And I guess they get past, you think, oh, how can they do that? And they're not falling over. And I think that's because they have, I don't know, but I'm guessing that they have stepped almost out of the physical, but by the physical action of going round and round. They're going into a sort of a trance state, and they're experiencing connection with the divine. Also, the Hezekiahs did it. They rock when they're in prayer. And they're generally there. I think they repeat the Jesus prayer over and over. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And they're just rocking backwards and forwards. And through that repetition, they will be getting into a very deep state. So yeah, they're going to somewhere else. And that somewhere else, I like to think, I would imagine, is what they're trying to achieve. They're trying to achieve connection with the divine, stepping out of themselves and their thinking brain and their material body and this material world to connect. Alan Watts, he was a massive, oh God, he was amazing. He did some really, there's loads of Alan Watts on YouTube. If you haven't come across Alan Watts, look him up. He called it the skin encapsulated ego. And he spoke about it in a way, it's the end of one's philosophical identification. Psychologist John Harrison, he defines temporary ego death. So again, he's saying temporary, as the loss of separate self, a deep and profound merging with this transcendent other. So yeah, I've said in videos before, it's about this something other, this something that is bigger than ourselves. So there are certainly pluses and minuses to this. Lots of people go and do ayahuasca, and some wish that they hadn't, I believe, and some have had hugely profound experiences from what I can gather. But this is something that maybe, this is totally achievable in practices and meditation, but again, it's being quite careful with it, because to my mind, we are in this human form, in this human world, and we're having to get up and do our 9 to 5s or however we live our lives. Sadly, it is 9 to 5 because this is how our world is conformed. I think more people are stepping out of that and seeing that there's another way and making it work for them, and that is fantastic. I would say that's the way to go. So on the plus side, it can be a transformative experience, leading to a shift in perspective and feelings, and this thing of merging with this thing that is larger than oneself, which for those that are very based in this material world, and I think there are more and more people that are realizing that there's a lot more going on here than we really think. Just in these practices of deep meditation, breathing exercises and things, that you are, yeah, even if it's just for, well, I would say try and build up to meditating for at least 20 minutes and beyond. That can take practice. Our minds are really busy, but when you do get into a thing of slowing that down, I did Buddhist meditation classes for a long time, and I did find that I could really, after a while, get quicker into this this state where it's not about completely eradicating all those thoughts in your mind. It's about realizing that you can let them pass. But actually, I did find that I could quickly, with practice, get into a state where I was going somewhere else. And I don't mean drifting off and daydreaming in a sense, but that I could step away from those thoughts of like, oh, I've got the washing to do, or tomorrow I've got to be at work and do this. I could get out of that a lot quicker. But Greg Braden, Heart-Brain Cohesion, this is a really quick one. This is a good one to practice. So you just slow down your breathing, and you imagine that you're breathing in and out of your heart, which is pretty close to your lungs, so it's not difficult to imagine. And then once you feel like you've slowed your breathing down, you got that focus, and then you just really build up in this center of you, this core feeling of love. Now, an easy way to do that is to think about the things and the people that you are really grateful for, the things in life that you really enjoy, times with people that you really enjoy, and being really grateful for that, literally in your mind, you know, thinking, oh, thank you so much for that, and that's amazing, and thank you so much for that. And then in that state, then imagining that you're literally, I imagine that I'm sending that love out into the world, this core feeling that you can imagine it as a pink light, you can imagine it as a green light, if that helps you, instead of just words and thoughts in your head. And you imagine that you're just radiating it out from your heart, and you're radiating it out into the world. Sometimes I do this when I'm driving along, I don't shut my eyes or whatever, but I literally, like, as cars are coming past me, I think, I send love to you, and I send love to you, and I send love to you, and it generates a certain thing. It's a lovely thing to do. So another plus side, path to enlightenment, or a stage in a journey towards unity with the divine or the ultimate reality. So again, it's this thing that is bigger than us, that we can feed into the divine, and the divine can feed back into us, and we can feed that out to others. Either by being in a state where you've connected with that, and it's just how you live your life, and you're a more positive, happy-go-lucky, whimsical kind of a person. And again, it's this surrender that you're giving something out into the world, you're doing for others. It can literally be that you're in a state of prayer, or you feel through these practices and breathing. It's not just the breathing exercises are kind of get you into a state of being able to get into that state for meditation, for heart-brain cohesion, that sort of thing. It becomes a lot easier. And also, once you start doing these practices and you have these shifts, I think that's the thing, you live out in the world in a different way. You have a different energy about you, a different light about you. A shift in perspective in the way you view yourself and your connection, yourself in connection to the world and those around you and nature. That's, big fat plus. And again, you keep doing these practices, you're living that way, and that's you're just gonna feel different in the world. A greater sense of connection with others, nature, or the universe can emerge. Yes, it can. Ego death or loss can be a source of profound insight and spiritual growth. Yeah, absolutely it can. Now again, if you go down the psychedelics route and you go down the ayahuasca route, or if you really get into a state, I haven't quite been on the edge of losing the plot, but I suppose also through studies of different things, I have got to the point of a few times of existential crisis where you just think, well, what is the point of it all? Because, and what's the point? There was a thing on Big Bang Theory, it was young Sheldon. When young Sheldon started attending, he had to take another class. So he chose philosophy. And within the first class, the philosophy teacher, she had him questioning everything about life and the world and the whole point of it all. And he just went into complete decline and wouldn't get out of bed. And actually then his philosophy teacher, when his mum got mad at her, or the gran got mad at her for saying that, she then said to him, listen, it's actually exciting, because it's actually about the exploration of everything and the possibilities of everything, not losing your mind. It's about going out there and facing the challenges and learning the things. So, but yes, a negative side, certainly, whether you lose it on drugs or you lose your mind because you just have an existential crisis, or you just get too deep into something that you're not quite grounded. You haven't grounded yourself. What I mean by grounded is physically, to ground yourself is to take your shoes off and go and stand out on the earth, or lie down on the earth, stand in connection with the earth. We are energetic beings. We have an electrical field. Whether you want to think about it in the aura way, that's too spiritual for you. The science is we are an electrical circuit, and physically grounding yourself in bringing yourself back to reality, that you are a human living on this planet. So a negative, you can also lead to psychological distress or mental challenges. Oh, there's my supervisor. Let's put my phone on silent and I will look at her in a minute. I keep doing that. My phone goes bing. Well, this is real life, isn't it? Never mind. So for me, it's all about the balance. We all have an ego. Why do we have an ego? What is the point of the ego? The ego is needed, from what I understand, for survival. Your ego is the one that's impeding you sometimes and stopping you from doing things in ways of the negative talk. Oh, you're no good at that. Oh, you can't do that. That negative self-talk. Or the thing of, that's not safe. Don't do that. Don't go down there. Don't try that. Oh, it could end up in disaster. It's the ego trying to step in to protect you. So that obviously, for survival, if you think about ancient man coming up through, but it's exactly the same today. That ego is there to protect you, to try and make you think in sometimes sensible ways. But the balance is that I think it's about making friends with your ego. And there are times when you do need to step outside of comfort zones. There are times when you do need to challenge yourself. There are times when you do need to broaden your worldview, broaden your spiritual awareness, and enter. I'm not talking about full on entering realms that are just like, but that might happen to you depending on the practices and the meditation and the things that you're doing. But I think sometimes there's a thing of making friends with your ego and having to say to the ego side of your mind, okay, this is not your turn. If you could just park yourself over there for a minute and we'll come back to you. I'll come back to you shortly, but right now I just need to go off here. So this is the left brain, right brain thing. Left brain, logical. So if you imagine like the ego maybe lives in the left side of the brain, and the right side of the brain, again, there's so many videos on this now. There's loads of research, people doing amazing things on the left brain, right brain. The right brain is the connecting with the spiritual side of things, connecting with the divine, working through the pineal gland, opening that up. And this is why Jesus said, cast your nets to the right side, that the children of light of Israel, and I'm not talking about the country Israel, break that word down, it actually means something else. It's children of the light. They are always on the east side. They camp in the east side. This is the biblical kind of side of it. When you look north, west is always on your left and east is always on your right. So it's your right hand side of the brain, east. Cast your nets to the right side. When Jesus had the fishermen out in the boat, Simon and Peter and all of them, that he's talking about that side of the brain, going to the spiritual connection with the divine side, not the logical ego, don't do that, be careful, side. So yeah, sometimes you have to say thank you ego, but park yourself just for a minute, and I'm just going to go off here and just go into meditation or prayer and just go and explore some things and work out some things. Yeah, so yeah, that's that. So enlightenment is this amazing thing where the ego is completely diminished and you're just stepping out. So there are Rinpoches and Buddhists and Muslim Sufis and people that have really gone, they're adepts, they've really gone into their path, they've lived it, they're living in a monastery, they're living in a cave, they're going out into isolation. In the shamanics, the shamans, they're doing this as well. They're all coming at the same thing in their own traditions. So when we have this thing of like, say I'm an interfaith minister, it doesn't mean I'm hedging my bets. It means that I've learned about the different aspects and you see the commonalities, and it's amazing. So this is all the different branches of the tree, because these people have come from different cultures and different worlds. That also brings me to aspects. So I realized like a few years ago when I was on the ministry course, or since then, I came to the realization, actually, I don't want to be an enlightened being. I don't want to go for this full attainment. I've been put, at the minute, my soul, my spirit is on this world, in this human body, living this life. And so it's all very well going off and being completely enlightened, but that's not the path for me. I'm not aiming for that complete goal, but I do like to feel that in terms of connection with the divine and my realization of the interconnectedness with everything and everyone, and especially nature, all the forms of living things. And when I think of living things, I also think of rocks are living things, crystals are living things, everything on this planet, even things that are, say, plastic or metal, everything has come from this planet that we have made here today and everything. I'm not saying they have the same degree of consciousness at all, but they certainly have a sense of spirit about them, something intrinsic within them. And of course, some of those things like gold and what is the stuff? Oh, tektite. I think it's, is it tektite? It is called tektite. These are things that have come from the cosmos, from outer space, as has probably, in a sense, all our minerals and stuff. Like, we're all made of stars. Even, what's his name? Oh God, I can never think of his name. That guy, the physicist, with the hair, a bit like a monk. I'll put the name in there. Even he says that, and he's like a well-respected material world scientist. So yeah, enlightenment, it's important to have a sense of enlightenment as becoming spiritually awakened, but not necessarily going for the full enlightened being, where when you die, you know, rainbows appear and your body just disappears off in light. Yeah. Surrender, now that's something that we can really get to grips with, because surrender is, lots of people don't like, in the religion faith sense, people don't like the idea of it. We've become, as a species, very sort of me, and I'm so important, and what I think is right and great, and I don't want to be told what to do. I'm a being that decides my own thing and all the rest of it. But I think that there's a lot to be said for surrender, for realizing really where you have come from. Now, you can put the name God on that, and I'm still working this out, and I'm preparing a video for you all on this God bloke, or this God being, or this God thing. You can think of it as source. You can think of the thing as where our soul and spirit comes from. Does it go back to God, who is like the leader at the top, or does it go back to God, as in God is the source of all? But that is the something other. When people talk about higher self, that there is the something other, and it's realizing that you are in fact connected with something else, and learning to so I think of meditation as the time when some people see meditation has become a thing where we're clearing our mind. Meditation to me is the time when I can be pondering things. Well, it depends which way around you want to use the word. Okay, so meditation, contemplation. If you think of one as mulling something over in your mind, which I suppose it would make sense that would be contemplation, actually. I don't use these words this way round, but there's a time when you sit in deep silence and you're really thinking a thing through, a concept, a spiritual thing, something you've learned. And another time when you sit in the same, but you try and clear the mind, and that's when you let spirit, God, source, the divine speak to you. And if there is something, so maybe the thing that you've been cogitating on, you give another amount of time in that meditation, contemplation, to let the answer speak to you. Whichever way round you want to use those two words. So surrender. If you haven't surrendered yourself to putting God back in the driving seat, instead of putting your mind, what you think, how you feel, and your ego in the driving seat, you put this something other, this God, this higher sense or being or realm. It's not realm, because that's kind of like a place, but you let that speak to you. You let that, it's that little voice inside you, not the one going, yeah, have that new pair of shoes because they're lovely, eat that chocolate because you really want it and I know I deserve it. It's the little voice that when something is going on, or you're trying to make a decision, and something instinctually, the gut feeling, the intuitive, that in your solar plexus or in your heart, this is another like voice of God in this sense. It's the voice that's saying, okay, like some very succinct, wise words. Sometimes you get it as a feeling, sometimes you get it as an actual, like a message of, I don't think that's the way to go. or giving you the way to go is, yeah, that's kind of what I'm on about. But if you haven't surrendered yourself to there being God in the driving seat, God by whatever understanding that is for you, then yeah, you're not you're not allowing for the loss of ego side of the point of this whole video. The other thing I think about the this thing of death to the ego, so to me, like I said, is this getting this imbalance between this ego part of the left-hand side of the brain. You're a human being, you're operating in the world, you do have to be a bit careful of some things, you do have to make wise decisions, but there's also like this right-hand side where connection with the divine and understanding the true essence of yourself, who you really are, who we all are, how we are connected here together on this world, connected here together with the nature around us, as well as connected with source or higher self or God, or the up above, the out there. There's something bigger and greater than our individual selves. But also this sense of self. If I think of Matthias de Stefano, and there was a video I watched a really long time ago, and he talks about like the first point is there was just like, if you imagine it like an amoeba, and this is consciousness, and it wants to experience itself, so it divides in two, and then that divides in three, and then four, and he speaks about this as these are the dimensions. I think again that can be confusing, but if you just imagine that from this one point of source of consciousness, we are all a bit of that. We carry a bit of that. Now you can think of that as your soul, as your spirit, as the bit of the spirit that's down here, that's connected to the source of it all, the pool of it all up there. And so I think that's the whole thing. We're all meant to be different. If we were all my husband always says, bless him, my husband, he says it wouldn't do for us all to be the same. And no, it wouldn't. It absolutely wouldn't, because for good or for bad, I don't want to use good and bad, but if you didn't have disagreements with people, or if you didn't have differences, you'd just be all homogenous, you'd just be all the same. And you wouldn't learn anything from that in this human experience. You wouldn't be met with any challenges. You wouldn't have the experiences that teach us things, and these teachings, these learning experiences help us to grow. So I do think, and also there just wouldn't be the richness. I think if we're all this God part in each of us, then the whole point of the consciousness of splitting in the first place to experience itself, it wouldn't be happening, because you'd just all be the same. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for us being our true, beautiful, amazing, awesome individual selves, but in the sense of the ego, and how people that let their egos run away with themselves, and they're very self-important, or they become very bossy, or sometimes you have to be bossy in certain situations, but there's a way still of being bossy, and there's a way of being like an absolute not disciplinarian, but like the leaders. Think of all the leaders that are just absolute again, what is the word when you lead by squashing down everybody else? It's not a natural, organic way to be. So dictator, that's the one. I always get there in the end. So it comes back to this thing of the middle road, of living in balance, of living your own lives, but in a morally good, gentle, kind, loving way, where you accept each other's differences, and you don't let the ego run away with you, thinking that you need everything first, and you need to be there first, and you're grabby, and you're selfish, and you're this and that. Surrender into trusting. This is the thing, that things do always work out. That those people that you meet that rub you up the wrong way, That's for good reason. What can you learn from that? There are the people that are you really gel with, and there's something beautiful about them. What is that reflecting back? The good bits in yourself to be more of, or that you know, maybe need to moderate some of your ego self to be a bit more like them. So yeah, this is all that I'm probably not teaching you anything new here, but I hope that sometimes when I hear people talking about things that I generally already know about, but they say it in such a way that it's just a beautiful reminder to bring us back, bring myself back to because we can fail and fall down every day. And again, bringing this back to Jesus and the Christian faith, it's the same in all the other faiths, but I know more of the experience of the Christian faith. Sin is missing the mark, and we are all sinners. We fall down each day, but you can pick yourself back up again. You can learn from that. Be kind, forgive yourself. Don't be listening to the negative talk. Just say, yeah, I get that. I see what I did here. Really reflecting on your own life and your own actions and your own words, and moving on again to try and not kill your ego. Just live in balance. Just live in balance. And I think enough is enough. Okay. Peace be with you.